So our next speaker, actually, Peter, you can still stay on the stage because you will be part of that discussion. Our next speaker is Hoshedar Gundevia. And Hoshedar, welcome to the stage. You're head of digital at Rise Worldwide Limited and Mumbai Indians, the biggest cricket team in India. And Hoshedar is very passionate about sports businesses, and he has over 5 years of experience in sports media. And he's also worked with major sport entities such as UEFA and Board of Control for Cricket in India. And this conversation is about converting social media followers to real fans. So I'll leave the stage to you guys. And if you have any questions for Hoshedar as well, make sure that you ask them. Okay, bye.
Thanks, Maria.
Bye, Maria. And hello, Hoshedar. Good day. How are you today?
I'm fine. Thank you very much, Peter. Nice to hear your earlier chat with Stefan. Pretty much in line with, I think, everything that I think we'll be discussing, and probably over the next 2 days that you guys will be discussing with the multitude of other panelists.
Exactly. So please tell us more about yourself and about Mumbai, India. Give us a little context. I mean, cricket, it's huge. We all know it's huge. It's the biggest sport.
Yeah, it is.
Let's say biggest sport at least.
Absolutely. So I'm sort of cognizant that this particular session is primarily geared towards a European audience, which might not be as well attuned towards cricket as a sport. They might have heard of it in some way or form, but not necessarily seen it in action in any way or form. So yeah, cricket by far is the biggest sport in India. And just from a sporting or cricketing ecosystem perspective, the Indian market essentially generates close to 70 to 75% of the entire cricketing revenue worldwide. As you can imagine, with a significantly high population in the country, which is quite cricket crazy, you can probably equate cricket to India as footballers to Brazil. It's that kind of passion. It's that kind of commitment to play, to consume, to interact, to rage, to just participate in every conversation that exists out there. It's just that the cricketing structure is slightly different from any other traditional sort of other sporting structures. So it's primarily a national team led activity or sport, which is when for most of the year you've got the national teams of select nations playing amongst each other, and you've got domestic competitions like the Indian Premier League, which is a T20 variant happening during select windows of sorts as such. And just like the Indian Premier League, there are multiple other national competitions or T20 competitions wherein a multitude of players participate. My role is primarily revolving around managing digital affairs for Mumbai Indians amongst other properties within the Rise and Reliance Sports and Entertainment vertical. Mumbai Indians is the most sort of successful IPL team thus far, winning the championship 5 times, more than any other team. In fact, the season's ongoing, and we've got a match tomorrow as well. So it's a busy period, as you can imagine, for everyone concerned within the IPL. That being said, I would just like you guys to take a look at a brief sort of video that we've created, which is around 2.5 minutes long, which gives you an indication of what Mumbai Indians is all about, what we do across digital for Mumbai Indians, and some of the key data that we track at this point in time. And post that, I think I'll just emphasize why some of that data that we currently track is probably not enough. So yeah, if we can just play that video, nothing like it.
It's a different press conference this year, but we are very happy that you have joined us from India.
Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Captain's Corner. I'm sure you're gonna love it.
वेलकम टू MI लाइव। मैं हूँ विराज गिलानी और ये है मिनी वानखड़े
वॉरियर एंड शिवा मावी। तुम्हारे पास शिवम है तो हमारे पास भी शिवम है।
Is there, Hoshedar?
Yeah, I mean, they are what they are, and there's a lot of effort that obviously goes behind the scenes to sort of make this happen. But the intent of this video was not to essentially sort of boast about the figures that we've achieved, but the intent of the video was to showcase that I guess Mumbai Indians has achieved a level of maturity within the Indian sports ecosystem, which now needs to look beyond these numbers. The numbers that we showcased and performances are significantly probably higher than what you would normally see in Europe and in North America, I would imagine, from a social media engagement and consumption perspective. But that's also because of the sheer number of people in the country, the cost of access to data. I'm talking about mobile data in the country as such, and the ridiculous appetite to consume content and be part of the cricketing conversation, I would say, as such. So a lot of it is I would say attributed towards that. But the key attribute or key element that I wanted to highlight over here is that for all these successes, which is great and bodes well for the future in some way or form, what it doesn't do is give you an indication of who's the fan.
So who's the fan?
For Mumbai
What more do you
Indians as
know
such,
about
and these
your...
are the kind of get exactly. So that's these are the kind of questions that we get asked quite a lot more now from a sponsorship perspective through our partners, but also internally we'd like to know a little bit more about who our fan is, and we have access to obviously television data which gives us an indication of who consumes, but the current methodology through which that is tracked is probably not 100% accurate, I would say, and that is something that we generally struggle with quite a lot. But it's the mechanism that's currently in place. We know, who watches Mumbai Indians matches from which region, what is their potential socio-economic group, what is their age category, and what is their gender, potentially. Again, this is on the basis of extrapolation and not necessarily absolute data assessment as such. So this is where digital comes into the picture quite a lot. And what we know about our fans at this point in time is clearly not enough. And only a fraction of what we should know or what we should have essentially invested in quite a long time back. But I think all of this starts or stems from a realization and an awareness, an internal awareness that, okay, we've done decent across third-party social media platforms, and we managed to engage our fan base significantly, and we are, I guess, the most followed team within the IPL universe across different social media platforms. All of that is great. All of that is indicative of good effort that's been made over the past 4, 5, 6 years. But there's still a significant amount of robust investment that is, I wouldn't say completely missing, but lacking to a certain degree, which allows us to know a little bit more about or additional information about our fans as such, which means, we've got 27 million fans on social media, and we only know a little more information about potentially 100,000 of them, which means we know a little bit about obviously their names, their email IDs, their phone numbers, and it's all sort of disparately structured and positioned at this point in time. And that's where the real challenge is, as you can imagine, to convert these sort of social media fans into, I guess, real fans in some way or form who we know more about and we can communicate with in an efficient manner, as Stefan also mentioned, and as you also indicated. So I guess at this point within our data journey, we are very much at the collection stage, not quite at analyzing, and surely not quite at sort of.
But tell me, is there an agreement internally at the organization on this shifting focus from third party to first party? I mean, I understand that you drive this very heavily, but how is the rest of the organization?
Yeah, I mean, the rest of the organization is now geared towards adopting this. I think, like you probably are aware, and basis our previous conversations as well, that there is an awareness and there is an acceptance of a lacuna or a gap, which was not the case previously. And I think COVID and everything that's happened over the past year and a half has only accelerated that level of awareness internally. And I don't sort of, it's not an issue within the organization. It's just that, there's always something or the other which is competing for attention, something or the other which is competing for investment. It's just that now data and first party data and the importance of first party data is being sort of considered as within a top 3, top 5 category from a prioritization perspective within the organization as such. As you can imagine, the Indian ecosystem or the Indian sports ecosystem is totally different from what it's like in Europe or in North America as such. That being said, the potential in India to tap into data is also significantly higher compared to, I would say, Europe and North America, because of the sheer numbers and for all the reasons that I mentioned with regards to connectivity, general appetite, general interest towards the game, at least from a cricketing perspective at this point. And the IPL is a proper juggernaut of sorts, and we've got sort of COVID rampant in the country, but the IPL is still ongoing at this point. So it's an interest juggernaut. It keeps the nation going. It also adds a layer of entertainment to individuals who obviously are going through a tough time due to obvious reasons at this point in time. So it contributes quite a lot to the nation, as well as from a sporting and economic perspective, from the Indian sports ecosystem perspective as well. So
that's fully understandable. And then you mentioned that you are mostly at the collection stage of the data. I mean, clearly there is a gap between 20 million followers on social media and then 100,000 in databases. So what are the strategic steps that you are taking towards collecting data? And what tips can you make maybe for all the audiences?
I think first thing, my first sort of, not a tip necessarily, but a first recommendation is to just get a sense of where one is and where one's sports organization is in this entire journey of, I don't want to call it digital transformation because it's too long a word or a term as such, but essentially awareness towards becoming data aware, I would say, at this point. And just having that awareness is step one. Admitting that one doesn't know everything within this journey is probably step two. And that's where, organizations like yourselves sort of come into the picture, wherein, you not just provide the platform, which is only a part of the puzzle and not the entire puzzle, of course, and also the sort of the necessary know-how and the consultancy layer, which is quite essential for entities which are not quite data aware, I would say. And it's not a criticism. A lot of entities are not quite data aware, including ours, I would say. We are not there as to the area wherein we'd like to be as such. What our objective should be is to be, within that analyzing phase of our journey, which we are not quite there yet. But what we have done is we've not let that stop us from at least collecting data. And that's one, I would say, positive aspect that we've sort of initiated within our journey and processes is to initiate data collection, even if it's disparate, even if it's across different platforms in some way or form. I'm happy that at least we've initiated and we are on that path. In the future, when we do invest, and we will at some point, we'll already have a robust starting point, and we'll not have to start from zero when we eventually do decide to sort of move to the next step, which is obviously investing from an analysis and actioning perspective, which is step 2 and step 3, so to speak, as such. So I think initiating that process of data collection, whether it could be something in the lines of a website and application registration mechanism, it could be utilizing third-party SaaS platforms that tap into your social media following to capture necessary user data in the form of engaging activities, whether it's through a quiz or a poll or a voting mechanism, or even a gamified sort of a game, a predictor sort of activation in some way or form as such. So the collection part is quite important as well. It's only step 1, as you can imagine, Peter. But I think, just like I said, awareness, and number 2, initiate. Because initiation is a challenge in most organizations, I would say, due to multiple reasons. And different organizations have different challenges, but challenges will remain. Convincing people internally to invest in something that will reap rewards way into the future, which is not as certain as, selling tickets now or selling merchandise now, is always a challenge. And how you navigate that process is I would say another aspect, probably for a different discussion.
Okay, and then we could say that, short, there is a clear process, and it is an always-on process for collecting more and more data. And well, there will always be new fans, and reaching the level that you have 20 million fans in the databases, that might be a little bit far ahead. But maybe you could tell me a little bit about your and the organization's expectations. So where do you want to be, let's say within 1 year, within 3 years? What's the goal?
Yeah, I would say from a 1-year perspective, and we'd like to take sort of small steps rather than go and think too far into the future. So I would say from a 1-year perspective, from a Mumbai Indian side of things, I think an additional, I would say, collection of data through a more robust mechanism than the current one that we have is obviously an objective, which would allow us to capture a lot more fan data and a lot more data about existing fans that we have in the system, and a lot and additional fan data as well. So that would probably grow the pie to a certain degree. Whether that number is eventually 250,000, 300, 400, 500,000, that remains to be seen. And that depends on our ability to adopt new technology and also investment appetite, I would say. So that's one, increase the size of the database, and also obviously look at tracking and analyzing behavioral data across not just social media and our website, but also more sort of consumer and consumer-centric basis through our membership program, through merchandise sales that we currently have, which is an important part of our revenue stream now, and more importantly, even in the future, as well as all other sort of third-party licensees that we tie up with for I would say different other kinds of IP exploitation mechanisms, I would say. So tracking behavioral data, analyzing that, and then obviously the third step, which is acting on that in some judicious manner, which allows us to form a one-on-one relationship, a customized one-on-one relationship with any given fan, creating personas of individuals within the database of our fans is also important. We need to know, out of the 250,000 or out of the 150,000 database that we have, how many of them purchase tickets or have purchased match tickets over the past, whatever, not 2 seasons now because we've not sold the tickets since 2019, but you get the drift. Similarly, how many of them have purchase merchandise and how many times do they interact with our website and application on a regular basis? What do they consume and how can we serve them better in the form of either content, engagement activities, or even merchandise sales that can hopefully then showcase a return on investment on all the expenditure that we make to not just sort of collect data, but also to analyze it and also then
Yeah,
act
but
on
that
it
sounds
in different
very
ways.
good, I believe. Also, especially because you don't have to bear the legacy. So there are not so many legacy systems. So you can start from a clean sheet. And it's very interesting when you point out that your data collection strategy is not just combining data from ticketing and merchandise. It's much more about the behavior. Can you tell us a little bit more about what kind of behavioral data would be interesting for you and what do you want to use it for in activation?
I think behavioral data from a consumption perspective, which means an persona A consuming content on our website of a certain kind. That's number one. Or purchasing merchandise related to a certain player, or buying tickets to matches featuring certain teams only, so to speak. These are sort of the behavioral trends that we would like to tap into. That's number one, which would in the future give us a more robust understanding of sorry, just give me a second.
Yes.
Sorry, am I audible now?
Oh, good.
Perfect. Sorry. Yeah. So that would probably give us a good understanding of what individuals within certain sort of set personas are trending towards, what their actions essentially entail, and how can we serve them better. Whether that's through a newsletter, a customized newsletter, as you mentioned, as compared to a generic emailer that we would normally send to all 100,000. Or an SMS notification which gives them a discount on the next set of sort of match tickets or merchandise potentially, or a 15% discount on their birthday, or a message from their favorite player on the basis of the behavioral data that we've tracked. That would, really sweeten the deal and I would say make that relationship between the fan and the team a little more robust, a little more meaningful, and a lot more emotional, I would say, and because that's quite important.
We see it with all the clubs and organizations that we work with, that the more they personalize, the more engagement they can expect in return. And the more engagement they expect and the more engagement they receive, the more loyal the supporters will be. And of course, if they are more loyal, then they will be converting better in financial terms as well. But okay, now what you have said sounds all great, but it's always hard to get started, and there are many challenges to go through during this process. What would you say are the biggest challenges in this journey for you?
I think the biggest challenges for me at an individual level is I would say, firstly, lack of awareness of what's out there. You don't know what you're missing if you don't know what exists out there, right? In many ways as such. So I think lack of awareness, lack of aptitude internally to see where I would say business is going and how the sports ecosystem is moving in a certain direction. Um, a little bit of sort of slowness in decision making internally. I would say those are some of the challenges that at least I have faced. And like I mentioned, that it's primarily because of competing wants or requirements within all organizations, and our organization is not different than any other. There will always be competing requirements, whether that's from a marketing perspective or player acquisition, salaries, so on and so forth. There will always be competition for resources internally, I would say, and I'm talking about monetary resources, time, looking at new individuals to be hired to look at specific projects, rather than sort of distributed approach towards managing important projects like this, I would say. So these are the primarily challenges that I've faced, but I think it's no different in any other organization. It'll just vary on a scale of, I would say, difficulty from relatively difficult to extremely difficult. I would say that's been my experience. But it's going to be difficult regardless, unless there is obviously significant foresight right at the get-go or right from the top of the management pile, wherein you have to do the convincing rather than it being a top-down approach towards adopting new technology and adopting a new culture even of working with data. It's adopting, like I mentioned, a new way of functioning. And as you know, changes is difficult to accept and surely difficult to adopt, especially if it comes at an additional cost that you had not foreseen previously as such. So it's a process. It takes time. You need to change people's opinions. You need to hopefully show them the right path, and then obviously its decision is always with the management, that they have that necessary influence and power to take the necessary decisions as such. Our job is to essentially show them the path and indicate why we need to do certain things, and then it's up to them to take that decision.
All right, and then just last question. So you spotted right, maybe the audience that we have today is mostly from Europe, but we also seen that you are the most engaged, most viewed
Yes.
club in India. So what do you think that Europe could learn from India and the Indian sports market?
What can Europe learn from India? I think from a social media engagement perspective, I think the Indian ecosystem is quite robust. Surprisingly, I would say, from some of the numbers that you've seen. I think just an ability to be a little more reactive in communication, and my primary topic of discussion would probably be, I think what Europe can learn from India is from a social media management and social media engagement perspective, not from a data management and analysis and action side of things as such, because we are significantly sort of behind the 8 ball on that one. What we are ahead of in this case is sort of planning and being reactive. I know these are two different things, but they go hand in hand. And whenever there's an activity or an action which can potentially elicit an engaging response from their fans, I think the Indian sports teams or Indian sort of cricket teams at this point in time are quite sort of on the button and necessarily tap into that sort of that core raw emotion of the fans in a better way and in a quicker way, and ride that wave of social media engagement, because it's a wave and then eventually it sort of goes down and then something else comes up in some way or form. I think Indian teams probably do a little bit of a better job compared to a vast majority of European sports teams. Also because I think there is a general rigidity towards being a little more social, a little more open, a little more fun and funny to a certain degree, because of societal norms, organizational structures, and obviously the persona that you'd like to portray to the external world, I would say. So yeah, those are a couple of things that I would say are slightly different, but I think we each have a lot to learn from each other with regards to different aspects.
Thank you very much. And well, I think learning is a good ending word. We learn. It's a learning cycle. And well, one of the other disruptive parts of COVID is that we are truly living in a digital era. So, well, you're in India, we are in Europe. It doesn't make a difference really. Yeah, time-wise it does, but otherwise, well, the connection has just become stronger. So thank you very much, Hoshedar.